The cameras were rolling. The studio audience was laughing. A liberal TV host sat back in his chair, smirking, ready to take another shot at Joe Rogan. He thought it was just another segment, just another joke at the expense of the world's most influential podcaster. But what happened next? Nobody saw coming, because when Joe Rogan responded, the entire internet erupted. Fans turned against the host, major names in media took sides, and within days the TV host's own career was hanging by a thread. It all started with one simple joke, just a few words. But in today's world, when you come after Joe Rogan, you better be ready for what follows. A popular liberal TV host, let's call him Mark, decided to dedicate a whole segment of his show to mocking Joe Rogan. He rolled clips from the Joe Rogan Experience, took jabs at Rogan's opinions, and even made fun of his audience. The jokes were brutal, the insults were sharp, and the audience in the studio ate it up. But Mark made one fatal mistake. He underestimated who he was dealing with. Because Joe Rogan wasn't just another celebrity who would ignore the noise. No, Joe had something Mark didn't. A platform bigger than any mainstream network, and a fan base that was ready to go to war for him. Within hours of the show airing, clips of Mark's jokes flooded social media. The usual critics laughed, mainstream outlets nodded in approval, and the internet did what it always does, it picked a side. But here's where things took a turn. People weren't just laughing, they were angry. Joe Rogan's fan base, millions strong, didn't take kindly to the mockery. They saw it as another example of mainstream media trying to tear down someone who spoke freely, someone who didn't follow the script. And in the world of Joe Rogan, there's one thing you don't do: underestimate his audience. Comments poured in, tweets fired off like missiles. #we stand with Rogan started trending, and within 24 hours, Mark's show was getting hit with thousands of dislikes and angry comments. But that was just the beginning. Joe could have ignored it. He could have laughed it off and moved on. But that's not what happened. Instead, in his next podcast episode, Rogan addressed the situation head on. But he didn't respond with anger. He didn't throw insults. No, he did something far worse for Mark's reputation. With a calm voice, Rogan pulled up the clip. He played it for his millions of listeners. And then, with a slight smirk, he said, "This is what happens when people don't have real conversations anymore. They have to mock what they don't understand." The silence in the studio was deafening. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't attacking. He was just making a point. And that's when it hit people. Mark's jokes weren't just jokes. They were part of a bigger problem. And Rogan had just exposed it in front of the entire world. The fallout was immediate. The video of Rogan's response exploded across the internet. His fans, fellow podcasters, and even some unexpected voices in the media started calling out Mark for what they saw as a weak, desperate attempt to stay relevant. Sponsors took notice. The network started panicking. And suddenly, the TV host who once sat so confidently in his chair was now backpedaling, trying to explain that it was just comedy. But by then, it was too late. Because in the battle between mainstream TV and independent voices, one thing was clear: Joe Rogan had won. Again, Mark thought the outrage would blow over. A few days of bad press, maybe a statement, and then back to business as usual. But he was wrong, because this wasn't just another news cycle. This was Joe Rogan's audience, and they weren't letting go. Clips of the incident kept circulating. Rogan's response was being analyzed, debated, and shared across platforms. And worst of all for Mark, people stopped taking him seriously. See, once your credibility is shaken in the public eye, it's almost impossible to fix. Fans of Rogan started digging into Mark's past, exposing hypocrisy, questioning his takes, and pointing out all the times he had been wrong before. His reputation wasn't just bruised, it was crumbling. And then, the worst thing that could happen to a TV host happened. Behind the scenes, executives were having meetings, viewership was dropping, advertisers were asking questions, and within weeks, whispers started leaking out. Mark's show was in trouble. Reports surfaced that his ratings had taken a hit. His social media engagement had plummeted. And soon, rumors began spreading that the network was quietly considering other options, which in media terms means they were looking for his replacement. And Joe Rogan, he just kept doing what he always did, bringing on guests, having deep conversations, and reaching millions without needing a mainstream platform. In the end, this wasn't just about one TV host making fun of Joe Rogan. It was about a much bigger shift happening in media, a shift where traditional TV no longer had control, where independent voices had more power than ever before, and where a single bad joke could end a career. Months later, Mark reappeared in an interview. He looked different, the confidence was gone, and when asked about the incident, he finally admitted something shocking. "I underestimated him," he said. "I thought it would be funny. I didn't think it would change everything." And in that moment, it became clear, this wasn't just about Joe Rogan, this was about the future of media itself. And for some, that future had already left them behind. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.